Welcome indeed to this little practical guide on the private consultations. Now, I'm not actually going to show you how to conduct or to actually do a private consultation. These guides are practical guides of things to consider when you're offering yourself as somebody who can give a private consultation. So what we have are private spiritual consultations, and this is a working guide rather than me telling you what sort of information to get and how to do it. There's quite a lot to consider here, and we'll be looking at several aspects. And primarily we are dealing here with the direct face-to-face consultation. So you are actually seeing the person that you're working with. Now, let's just take a moment to think about the consultation spaces. There's the home. A lot of people do their private consultations from home. Some people are lucky enough to have a dedicated office or workshop space where they can conduct their consultations. That might be you have rented an office or a workshop space. Sometimes they can occur within another organisation. So, for example, in mediumship, it would be quite common to conduct the consultations in a church, perhaps. Sometimes a church will set aside a day of the month where people can book a consultation with a medium. And so you there have everything set up. You have everything done for you, and hopefully the bookings are done for you as well. Of course, you may make the arrangements too, so that's something to be considered. And of course, what we're seeing now, and is becoming more and more popular, are the online consultations. And they're rather wonderful, really, because although there's nothing quite like being in the same room as the person, at least you can reach people who wouldn't otherwise be able to perhaps make the journey, who couldn't afford or to travel, or perhaps they even have mobility problems. Who actually knows? But what it does is it opens up the possibilities. And many of you out there may already be doing consultations, and you find you've got clients the other side of the world. And that's because you're able to do this online as well. So the primary consultation spaces would be the home, the dedicated office, another organisation, and of course online. And we'll be looking at each space and the pros and cons and good practice, ways we can work with it. Let's take a moment to look at the main types of consultations. Evidential. So those would be where you are giving evidence of another intelligence. So you might be communicating with somebody in the spirit world who is known to the person who is with you, the recipient. And that we call evidential rather than working with the energy of someone living here. And that is your job, is to bring through that love, bring through that communication. But it has to have an evidential aspect to it, so it has to relate to the person, and your recipient needs to know exactly who it is who is communicating. Psychic readings, and all of these can be done in all the workspaces that we've spoken about. But psychic readings, psychic coming from the Greek word meaning the soul, is about working with and reading, if you like, intuitively the energy of the recipient or perhaps the situation. So, for example, someone may come to you and just say, "Oh, I just want you to tell me about my life, about me, about my personality," anything you pick up at all. Those ones are a little bit frustrating because it's much better if you have a focus. So I would turn that round and say, well, which aspect specifically would you like to focus on first? Or they may come to you because they have a particular problem. Perhaps they want you to look into the situation at work. Perhaps they want you to look into their situation at home. Or perhaps they're concerned about a particular issue. So you would be working intuitively with this. That means working with your soul. And you are reading. That means you are perceiving the information from the person sat in front of you, rather than actually communicating with someone, another intelligence, who is not of this world any longer. So that's the psychic reading. It can involve cards. It can involve some of the old ways like tea leaf reading as well. Many people do tarot readings, inspirational card readings, angel card readings, psychometry, where you'd hold an object and you'd allow yourself to intuit the impressions that you receive. So there are a number of ways that you can conduct psychic readings. Now, this is something we see more of now with people who are working in this field, and they may wish to have a private consultation that's known as a spiritual assessment. And what a spiritual assessment is about the medium working with the energy of the recipient, so psychically, intuitively, and they are perhaps looking at the journey of their spiritual development, their pathway. Perhaps they're looking at the challenges, or they're looking at the strengths. They're looking at the weaknesses, the areas that somebody needs to strengthen to move forward. They might be looking, for example, at how their development started and creating the story of their journey. And also, although we can't accurately predict the future, they may be looking forward to the direction that somebody is heading in. And we all know they have free will, so whatever we discover, they can say, no, slam the door and go in a different way. But that is really what a spiritual assessment is about. A lot of people now are offering mentoring, and it's a wonderful thing to do because it's something you do when you have gained many years of experience. I wouldn't recommend anyone take up mentoring. It's become a bit of a buzzword, who's perhaps only done a couple of workshops, perhaps only worked professionally for a year or two. You need to have been doing this for quite a long time and be very experienced. And what you're doing is you're working one-to-one with somebody, or with a small group normally for mentoring. And the mentoring is where someone is going to get personal attention, where their specific skill set is going to be explored, strengthened, new skill sets brought in. It's an opportunity for someone to work on a much more personal level with someone who has a lot more experience and perhaps even wisdom. It's become a bit of a buzzword, but I wouldn't recommend anyone becomes a mentor unless they're really experienced in their field. But it is a wonderful thing to do, and it can work in many ways. For example, you may set out a whole program of mentoring after meeting the mentee and what their needs are. You may set goals along the way, short-term goals, long-term goals, mid-term goals. Or it could be you have someone who's pretty experienced that needs somebody who's more experienced as a sounding board. So they might actually be working professionally already, and your job, of course, is to help guide them, come together, let's see what's happening, let's see what we can help them with. So it can work in a number of ways. It can be structured or it can be unstructured, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to do.